Hello. In this video, I want to talk about 12 awakened truths about relationships. This video is in response to the latest Aubrey Marcus episode and the wave of commentary around radical monogamy. And this video is not about Aubrey. This is about the collective awakening around love, around intimacy, around truth, and around discernment. Why this is personal for me is that I am a hypnotherapist who has worked with thousands of couples. I have had 2 divorces where I was the one who left and not always in integrity. I am now in a soul-aligned relationship with my fiance that is conscious, but it also still has its own unique challenges. And so I'm speaking here today not as a guru, but as a 56-year-old woman who's lived, who's learned, and who's now sharing without sugarcoating the spiritual buzzwords. And so, who is Aubrey Marcus? He is the founder of On It. He's a podcast host. He's a best-selling author. He's a spiritual influencer. He's got a huge platform and he's made a lot of money. He has explored psychedelics and polyamory, and he has done that publicly. He was formerly in a polyamorous relationship with a lady called Whitney. This is all news to me, by the way, because I'm not someone who's actually followed Aubrey in the past. His energetic signature has never resonated with me, but there's no judgment there. We don't resonate with everybody, and that's why we have many people who are spiritual teachers. And so when he was in a polyamorous relationship with Whitney, I saw the previous podcast just to get up to speed with who this person is. And they believed that feeling jealous was actually a way to, they believed that having a polyamorous relationship was dealing with the wounding of jealousy. And they believed that they could become stronger emotionally by having a polyamorous relationship. He's now married to a lady called Vlana, and he recently announced, and this is where everyone's talking about his new announcement, is that he recently announced that he received a divine message from the goddess Isis, who instructed him to go on a dating app, to find another lover, and to impregnate both Vlana and Alana. He framed this as part of a spiritual mission, which was supported by a featured doctor to validate the whole process. And so my initial reaction was this: they're all consenting adults. They're all speaking their truth. And there's nothing wrong with that. And so I still stand by all of those things. They are all consenting adults. They are all speaking their truth, and that's great. I am always speaking up about we need to speak our truth. There is nothing wrong with that. But what I do want to talk about is some concepts. And these concepts matter, and this conversation matters because people often mistake visibility and having a large platform as wisdom. And because spiritual teachings can be distorted to justify our ego-driven choices, we do need to look at what is being spoken about, because our bodies can sense what is true if we learn to listen to them. Relationships are sacred, and the misuse of spiritual language can influence other people. So I'm going to be talking about 12 truths about relationships in response to the Aubrey Marcus announcement about impregnating 2 women. And this is a hot topic in the spiritual community. But the very, very first truth that I'd like to say is that we need to have discernment over blindly following spiritual influences who are on pedestals. So Aubrey Marcus comes across as a very nice person who's always speaking his truth. And I'm not questioning that whatsoever. But just because somebody has a platform, just because someone is a bestseller, just because someone has made millions of dollars, it doesn't mean that their choices are aligned with your choices. So the amount of influence that we have and how big our audience is does not equal enlightenment. It doesn't mean that therefore we are enlightened. So we need to tune into our body to work out what is true for us and what is not true for us. And so when I was listening to the Aubrey Marcus podcast, I felt a lot of cringe. It was like, oh, cringe, cringe, cringe. And cringe is a contraction. Cringe means, oh, this is not my truth. When I hear truth, I feel goosebumps, I feel heat in my body, and I feel completely aligned with it. But when I get that kind of cringe feeling, it's a contraction and it's not my truth. If someone needs to have a doctor when they're announcing their truth to validate their divine guidance, I feel that something is off. And that doctor, every time he spoke, it actually made me cringe. It was like, oh my God, just stop talking already, because this is quite sickening with your, fluffy spiritual jargon. And so that's the first point, which is just tune into yourself. Like, does this sound like your truth? Because it's fine for these people and these influencers to be speaking about what's going on in their world and their relationships, but it doesn't mean that that's the way. It just means that's their way. And so the second thing is I feel that this is a really big paradox in spiritual communities, which is that the spiritual community work really hard to get rid of labels, only to replace them with new, shiny, conscious labels. And so when I had my spiritual awakening, I did exactly the same thing. It's called spiritual ego, where we get rid of this label and this label and this label. I'm not this person. But then there's this new shiny label, which is all dressed up in the spiritual form, which is actually still ego. And so an example of this from the Aubrey Marcus podcast was this ridiculous term called radical monogamy. So by putting the word radical in front of monogamy, it doesn't mean that it can mean something completely different to monogamy. So he was still advocating a polyamorous relationship with Valana and Alana, but calling it radical monogamy. It doesn't make sense. It's not the truth. You cannot be radically monogamous with two people. Monogamous means you are with one person. And so just call it for what it is. Just do not dress it up in these new spiritual terms and these new robes. Just call it out for what it really is. Spiritual ego loves dressing itself in new robes and new clothes to make it sound so like new age and close to God. So radical monogamy, sacred union, evolutionary love doesn't equal enlightenment. It doesn't equal alignment. So liberation does not come from adopting new titles, but it comes from shedding as many titles as possible. Number 3, what women deeply, deeply need underneath those buzzwords is safety. They don't want radical freedom and radical liberation. They want to feel chosen. They want to feel seen. They want to feel emotionally safe. And so many women, they say yes to polyamory, not from an empowerment point of view, but from a fear point of view, because they fear that there is nobody that's better than this person. They fear that they're going to be alone. They fear that they're going to give up the best that they can possibly have. So an example of this is the Cassie and Diddy case, where what appeared as choice was really just unhealed trauma in disguise, where she said yes, 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 yes to all these freak offs, when in fact she just really was in love with her man, and she was prepared to do anything to keep her man. And so you might say to yourself, well, why are you comparing the Cassie Didi case with the Aubrey Marcus Valana case? Because it feels to me it's the same thing on a different level. And so I believe that what most women need, not all women, what most women need is the feeling of being held, seen, and feeling safe with their man, or whoever their partner is. When I say their man, it could be, the masculine in their relationship. Number 4, attachment and the nervous system. So wanting liberation could be a trauma response, not an enlightened one. The nervous system just craves consistency. And what polyamory can do is destabilize without having strong self-awareness. So it actually sends you off center, and it forces you to have really strong self-awareness, but you still get off center. You're still fighting. You're in this, freeze, flight, or fight response. So there's just this. What I want to say is that not all discomfort is growth. Not all discomfort is growth. Discomfort leads to growth, but not all discomfort is growth. Sometimes it's your intuition screaming, fuck no, not for me. I don't want this. This feels wrong. So there's a difference between healthy expansion and soul violation. But this is the thing, and this is what I also believe to be true, because there is no wrong path for anybody. Sometimes for some souls, polyamory is a soul contract. That is part of their energetic signature. They're here to serve a purpose, and they do come down and reincarnate on this earth with a blueprint to catalyze awakening through non-traditional paths for themselves and for other people. My guess is that Aubrey is following this soul path, where this is part of his energetic blueprint. And these journeys are often intense. They bring up identity collapse, grief, liberation for all parties, but it is not for the faint of heart. And it's not the way. It's not the superior way. It's not the better way. Polyamory is not better or worse. It's just one way that some souls sign up for. And therefore, that's why there's no judgment in any choice. As long as people are aware that just because you choose the path of polyamory doesn't mean that you are stronger for it. It doesn't mean that you're more liberated for it. It doesn't mean that this is a fast track to freedom. Doesn't mean any of that. And so, I once worked with a woman who, through loving 2 people at once, she uncovered deep layers of generational shame, self-abandonment, and self-trust. It wasn't about sex, it was about soul sovereignty. Number 7, all paths are valid, but not all are aligned. I really believe that there is no wrong path, but they're not all aligned. Let's look at validity versus truth. So every single path brings lessons. That's why there's no wrong path. But not every path brings peace. And for me, I found that out the hard way, that I thought that I was liberated. I thought that I was taking on the path of freedom, but it was actually bringing me the power of shame, the path of shame, the path of a lack of integrity, the path of being lost, the path that was furthest away from God. And so you can learn from chaos, but what you learn is what truth is not. So don't confuse spiritual challenges with soul alignment. And so by doing all the things that was not in integrity in my past, I learned what truth really was. And so therefore, was it the wrong path? No. But let's not pretend at the outset that it is the best path. Number 8, relationships are the hardest work of all. If you want to become spiritually aware, consciously aware, and you want to journey through this life, you need to know that relationships are hard work, that infidelity is a failure of emotional courage, but it's not a failure of monogamy. It doesn't mean that monogamy doesn't work because you weren't faithful. It just means that you weren't courageous enough to share the truth with your partner because you were holding a lot of fears. So opening the relationship is not always the brave move, but it can be an escape hatch from the truth that you really need to work on. And sometimes the most spiritual thing that you can do is stay in the relationship and work on it, or leave with honesty, with love, and with clarity. And so, number 9, let's look at masculine leadership versus spiritual ego. True masculine energy holds space and creates safety. It doesn't spiritualize power plays. It doesn't say, this is what I'm choosing to do. You can, if you want to become a better version of yourself, you need to stay with me, which is what I was sort of hearing from the Aubrey Marcus podcast that he was saying to Valana, that she needs to lean into her fears so she can become a better version of herself. No. Leadership is rooted in integrity and makes us feel safe. It doesn't make us feel not good enough or smaller than who we really are. So the masculine doesn't need spiritual jargon to justify their desires. Number 10, spiritual narcissism and entitlement. When Aubrey Marcus said, the goddess Isis told me that I need to impregnate 2 women, it was like, seriously, dude, you're now claiming this get out of jail free card and overriding your partner's needs, overriding your commitment, just so that you can do what you really want to do. Because the fact is that, okay, you may believe that that's what you were told, but the number one universal truth is free will. You don't have to listen to any spirit or any energy. So your desire can be disguised as divine instruction, but any downloads that we get from another source or from another energy can never bypass your own sovereignty. Ever, 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 ever can it bypass your own sovereignty. The number one universal truth is free will. Does this feel aligned with my values? So no matter what goddess is going to tell me what I need to do, is this feeling aligned with my values? In fact, in his podcast, he said that his whole stomach sank. That's not what expansion feels like. Expansion feels all tingly and warm and, oh yes, this is my truth. It doesn't feel like a contraction. Number 11, energetic hygiene and sexual entanglement. Every single sexual interaction creates energetic imprints in your soul, visible or not. And so the more partners that you open yourself up to, the more psychic cords you carry. So most people who are doing polyamory have no idea how much soul fog they're walking through. One of my clients, she couldn't understand why she felt so drained and foggy. It was the energetic residue that she was holding by being connected to other people. And this doesn't just come from sexual encounters. This comes from allowing any other energy to enter your energetic field. Even as a therapist, allowing your clients' energies to enter your field. Even when you walk into a party or a supermarket. So You need to learn to protect your energetic field. But when you're involved in the sexual act, it becomes even more difficult. Number 12, devotion is the ultimate spiritual practice. So, in a world obsessed with freedom, devotion is actually rebellion. And devotion doesn't mean losing yourself, it means finding sacred ground to stand on. And so, whether you're monogamous, polyamorous, in between, it's about having depth over so many new experiences. So, love doesn't need drama to be divine, it needs presence. And so, these are the final closing messages that I want to give you. There is no right or wrong path, there's only the one that brings you home to your body and to your soul. And just because a influential person is telling you that this is their way, it doesn't mean that it's the truth. It doesn't mean that it needs to be your way. Follow the feeling in your body. If it feels expansive, if it feels safe, if it feels deeply true, it is. Love does not confuse, ever. Love clarifies. Love is real. Love is powerful. Love gives peace. And if the love that you're in doesn't give you any of those things, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just the path that you are on. If any of these concepts rang true for you, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. And please subscribe to my channel where I will be sharing from my heart to your heart. Just remember, always, always, always trust yourself. Always trust your body, what your body is saying. Yes, this is true. No, it's not, because I can feel it in my body. And always, always, always live in truth. Sending you so much love.